When his older brothers escape from hell, Satan's youngest son must go to Earth to hunt them down before they corrupt the souls of all humans. Today we're going to recap the story of the movie, Little Nicky, from 2001. In the underworld, Nicky, the Mephisto youngest son, is playing guitar in his room when one of the auxiliary demons shows up to tell him that his father wants to talk to him about who will rule hell after he retires. Even though he knows he has no chance of being chosen, Nicky goes to the main hall and meets his older brothers who begin to control his mind, forcing him to do unpleasant things. Just then, Mephisto arrives at the meeting and starts fighting with Cassius for invading his brother's mind, throwing him away with his telekinesis. When everyone is back on their feet, Mephisto starts the meeting by saying that he has been the Prince of Darkness for the last 1,000 years and that he thinks it's time to choose a replacement, but instead of electing one of the 3 sons, he decides to continue on the throne until one of the boys is ready. According to Satan, after analyzing each of the children, he came to the conclusion that the twins Cassius and Adrian are extremely cruel, while Nicky is very kind, so none of the 3 is able to maintain the balance between good and evil. Outraged, the elders complain about Mephisto's choice and decide that they will create their own hell here on planet Earth, corrupting people and ending the balance between good and evil. Determined, the 2 go through the portal responsible for bringing souls back from the world of the living, but as it is only one way, the passage freezes as soon as they pass through, preventing the new ghosts from reaching the underworld. Upon witnessing what they have done, the doorman of the underworld rushes to the throne to report what he has seen and leaves Mephisto extremely worried. Seeing his father's reaction, Nicky approaches him to ask what the problem is, and he replies that now that new souls can no longer enter hell, their bodies will begin to disintegrate until they finally disappear. Wanting to help him, Nicky asks what he can do, and one of the demons replies that he must go to Earth to bring his brothers back. In this way, the portal will unfreeze and the souls will be able to enter hell again, re-establishing Mephisto's power, but as the 2 left together, they must also return at the same time. Frightened, Nicky says he's never been to Earth, and his father reassures him that the worst that can happen is that he perishes, and if that happens, he'll just go back to hell and can be sent back at any time. Knowing that the old man has less than a week before he disappears, Nicky takes a vial capable of sucking out souls and sets off for Earth with the mission of capturing the brothers. However, as he knows nothing about humans, he gets stuck when he passes through the portal and ends up being run over by a subway, instantly returning to hell. When he returns to Earth, Nicky sees a bulldog holding a sign with his name on it and decides to follow the talking dog, discovering that his name is Beef and that he is an old friend of Mephisto's who has come to help. When he hears about the mission, the little dog says that it won't be easy because Adrian and Cassius have the ability to possess people's bodies, so they can be disguised anywhere in the city. Nicky then decides to try to capture Beef with the bottle, and the dog quickly realizes that he is working with someone with the IQ of an amoeba. After proving that he's not a demon, the little dog takes Nicky for a walk through the streets of New York, where they meet one lunatic after another. After ruling out a few suspects, the young man starts to feel cold and Beef decides to take him to buy some clothes and food. With his stomach full, Nicky feels he's ready to fight the brothers and runs into the middle of the street while calling for them, getting hit by a truck and returning to the underworld for the second time. When the young man returns to Earth, Beef explains the importance of staying on the sidewalk and says that Mephisto has sent some money for his son to rent a house, but the bulldog has already spent most of it before he arrived, and now Nicky will have to share the apartment with Todd, an extremely weird amateur actor. Unaware that Nicky is after him, Adrian possesses the body of the Bishop of New York and begins to turn the population against Jesus, while Cassius takes over the mayor's office and manages to convince people that sin is free, as well as using his political powers to cause chaos in the city. While his brothers destroy the balance between good and evil, Nicky wanders the streets trying to put everyone's soul into the bottle, even breaking into the zoo to see if any of his brothers are possessing a polar bear. But obviously this goes wrong and he ends up in hell for the 3rd time. After a whole day looking for Cassius and Adrian, Beef decides he'll check with his contacts and leaves Nicky sleeping alone in the middle of the park, making him the perfect target for a thief to take the bottle away. Strolling through the park, a couple of metallers see the whole scene and decide to wake Nicky up, scaring him so much that he spits fire out of his mouth. In order to recover the flask, the Demon King youngest son starts running through the streets of the city looking for the bandit, finding him while he is trying to sell his belongings on the sidewalk. On seeing the bottle, Nicky asks for it back and the thief refuses, asking the stranger to leave and stop ruining his business. At the stall close by, a woman called Valerie sees the whole scene and decides to intervene, asking the crook to return the items before she calls the police. Cornered, the man hands over the bottle and expels the 2, who sit down on a stool to talk and then go for ice cream. As they walk along the sidewalk, Adrian continues to cause chaos in the city until he sees Nikki with a girl and decides to invade his brother's mind, causing him to offend Valerie and spoil their date to the point where the girl leaves disappointed. Alone with Adrian, Nikki tells him that the gates of hell have been frozen and asks his brother to come back, but he obviously refuses and uses his mind control to make the youngest walk down the street until he is run over by a garbage truck. After returning to Earth for the 5th time, Nikki goes home and finds out from the news all the chaos his brothers are causing, which makes Beef so worried that he decides to train him on his own. To learn how to unlock the demon's powers, the Bulldog decides to start with the transmutation and asks Nikki to take a can of Coke and concentrate all his evil to turn the liquid into some corrosive substance, but they are interrupted by Todd, and the only thing Mephisto's son manages to do is make the soda taste like Pepsi. After the human leaves, Beef fights with Nikki, saying that his father will perish if he continues to be weak like this, making him so furious that he unleashes part of his powers and destroys the television in Todd's room. Because of this, the aspiring actor asks to watch TV in the living room and they get together to watch a basketball game, but during the match, Nikki notices that the referee is doing everything he can to cause a fight between the two teams and assumes that one of his brothers is refereeing the game, so he runs straight to the stadium to resolve the conflict. After a disastrous first half, fans of both teams are outraged by the result of the game and are on the verge of causing a riot. To prevent this from happening, Nikki offers to do the halftime throw that's worth a piece of pizza to the whole audience, planning to put everyone in a good mood. With the ball in his hands, Nikki begins to channel all the evil inside him and ends up causing the object to burst, forcing the presenter to give him another ball to throw. With the second half about to begin, the youngest throws with all his might and almost makes the basket, but is stopped by Cassius, who is possessing the referee. Mentally, the brothers talk and Nikki tries to convince him to go back to hell, but when he refuses, the youngest sees no other option but to challenge Cassius to a match. During the contest, Nikki manages to keep possession of the ball and jumps from mid-court to make a dunk so strong that it breaks the acrylic of the basket. Impressed by his brother's powers, Cassius asks where he learned it and Nikki replies that he became stronger after drinking a demonic juice, giving him the bottle to pour his soul into without knowing it. After Nikki's victory, the two Metallers approach the clumsy demon and promise to serve him for all eternity, making a cake altered with certain substances as a way of congratulating him on his achievement. After eating everything, Todd and the rest of the group are completely dazed and sit in the living room talking about what it's like to live in hell, but Nikki's mind is elsewhere and he can't forget Valerie. Wanting to see her one more time, Nikki decides to pay her a visit and climbs outside until he reaches her window. Still upset with him, Valerie fires her pepper spray into the weird stalker's eyes, causing him to stumble off the balcony and plummet into free fall. Awakening his powers, Nikki begins to levitate just before impact and manages to fly back to the window, where he decides to tell her who he really is and explain that Adrian was controlling his mind during their last encounter. After accepting his apology, Valerie holds her lover's hands and begins to fly through the skies of New York with him, but while the two of them are having their special moment, Adrian has the police chief's body and puts a $50 million bounty on his brother's head, editing the Scarface scenes to accuse him of having committed a major crime. Unaware of the reward, Nikki walks down the street as normal and is soon recognized by a mob who begin to chase him. Trapped in an alley, he manages to control his powers and split his body into thousands of spiders that run back to Todd's apartment, but Nikki ends up leaving traces and the entire population of the city is waiting for him on the sidewalk. Not knowing what to do, the young man decides to ask his father for help and asks Todd to finish him off in the bathtub, arranging to meet in the subway when he returns. In the underworld, Nikki sees that his father has already lost more than half his body and one of the demon assistants tells him that Mephisto will only live until midnight, so the young man has just over 12 hours to capture Adrian and bring him back. While Nikki is in hell, the duo of Metallers go to the police chief and ask for the $50 million reward, taking the entire police force to wait for the devil in the subway. Seeing Todd and Beef on the tracks, the officers take them to the police station and leave the chief of police alone with the two Metallers, allowing Adrian to reveal his true form. Completely insane, the two applaud as the demon comes out of the policeman's nose, until they are approached by a homeless woman who asks for some coins. Instead of helping, the two of them take the bottle from her hands and start to drink, impressed by the taste. Curious to try it out, Adrian goes over to them and picks up the drink to quench his thirst, but just as he's about to put the bottle in his mouth, he notices that one of the men is completely sweaty while the other doesn't seem to be hot at all. Finding this strange, Adrian asks how come he's not sweating and the metalhead replies that it's because of the beer, but the son of Satan realizes that Nikki is possessing the human's body and uses his powers to drive him out. At that moment, he opens the jar in which Cassius is trapped and says that the new hell only needs one prince. but that Nikki could keep him company inside the magic container. He then throws the bottle at Nikki and orders the youngest to pour his soul inside, picking up Valerie and carrying her towards the tracks to make him do it. At the top of the station, Beef manages to blind the cops with a smoke bomb and escapes from the restraining collar, running back to the tracks where he fires an arrow right into the villain's knee. Taking advantage of his injury, Valerie tries to push Adrian onto the tracks and ends up falling with him, forcing Nikki to jump in to save her. Because of this, they both end up being run over, and for some reason Adrian ends up in hell completely alone, ending the demon's hopes that Mephisto will recover. Furious, the villain asks what his brother is up to and grabs the doorman of the underworld to make him talk, but instead of making up something about Nikki, the man reveals that since Mephisto is weakened, anyone who sits on the throne will be crowned the new Satan. To prevent this from happening, Lucifer decides to intervene and orders his grandson to stay away from the throne, but Adrian doesn't listen to his grandfather and pushes him away, sitting down in the chair and becoming the newest king of the underworld. Without knowing what's going on, Nikki wakes up in paradise and ends up in a room where 3 angels are making him a greeting card. Suddenly, one of the women introduces herself as Holly and reveals that she is his biological mother, making Nikki happy to finally meet her. After the reunion, the other creatures congratulate him on saving Valerie and say that this is what got him into heaven. Curious, Nikki asks how they saw everything that happened, and the women reveal that they have a monitor capable of reproducing everything that happens on Earth, including series and movies. Suddenly, the broadcast is interrupted by a newscast in which the reporter warns that a piece of hell has mysteriously appeared in Central Park, but instead of getting scared, the townspeople go to the place and start a big worship event, believing that the Demon King is salvation. Sitting on the throne, Adrian reveals that he has been deceiving them all this time by saying that hell wasn't real, but that now that he has become the Prince of Darkness, he will take the souls of all of them before midnight. From heaven, Nikki sees that his brother is about to eliminate the woman he loves and begins to regret not being strong enough to beat him, prompting Holly to hand him a small glowing orb sent by God. Even though he doesn't know what it is, the young man takes the orb and asks his mother to send him to New York, where various demons rush to confront him, but this time Nikki decides that he will use the powers of good instead of evil, creating countless good things that leave the creatures of the underworld mesmerized. With this, the youngest manages to bring the demons over to his side and advances towards Adrian to make him enter the bottle, but obviously he refuses and exterminates all the traitors, leaving Nikki alone to fight. With no options left, the young man begins the transmutation fight with the new king of the underworld, but Adrian soon tires of the contest and decides to start fighting, hitting his brother and knocking him off the cliff. From the heavens, Holly watches her son fall and materializes a bed to cushion his fall, but the new king of hell is still determined to eliminate his half-brother and jumps on him, only to end up hitting his head on a steel bar. Still, Adrian gets up and starts a pillow fight where Nikki comes out the winner, but just as he's about to be sucked into the jar, Adrian asks for help from the demons holding the half-brother, allowing him to trap Nikki's soul inside the container. As he is being extracted, he holds Adrian's clothes, who is also sucked in, causing the 3 brothers to meet again for the final showdown, while the crowd cheers for Nikki outside. After fighting for some time, the youngest comes out as the winner and goes to Valerie so that they can have their first kiss, but the girl realizes that something is wrong and Adrian reveals that he was impersonating his younger brother, taking the form of a bat and soaring above the crowd. While the villain is distracted, Valerie picks up the bottle and starts calling for Nikki, who somehow manages to get out. With no ideas of what to do, the young man picks up the orb his mother gave him and drops it on the ground, causing Ozzy Osbourne himself to spawn to eat Adrian's head, spitting the man's soul into the jar straight afterwards. With that, Nikki says goodbye to his friends and finally returns to hell to restore his father's powers, making his body rebuild itself as if by magic. After seeing everything his son has done, Mephisto allows him to return and build a family with Valerie and Beef, while taking care of life on Earth. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.